Hello and welcome. My name is JodieLynn Craven, founder of Abundance Consciousness, and this is my dear friend Heather Marie.
Hi, I'm Heather Marie, founder of Soulgate. Welcome to Channel Squared, where we have extraordinary conversation about everyday life topics.
Yeah. And today we are diving into the embodiment of feminine energy, femininity. It is the month of it's Female History Month. So we are celebrating, we're both females. And I know that this is something on both of our journeys that we have struggled with, that, we have encountered. What does it mean to embody divine feminine? So I'm excited to jump into this conversation.
Most definitely. And I think that, sorry guys, you may feel like you are not a part of this conversation, but you are, because we all have divine feminine energy. So don't log out right now when you hear us talking about, the feminine side of the energy.
I feel like saying, say what? I think that's a really big misconception, and maybe it's a societal thing that we don't learn that within each of us there is this co-creation between the masculine and the feminine that comes together. It's not just partnerships with man and woman and man, whatever, it's within us as well. So we want to tackle that today. Let's talk about that. So if you're a man, you're not being left out of this conversation. You're getting in. So
Definitely.
let's start with what is divine feminine? What is divine masculine? I'd love to hear your take on this, Heather.
So when I look at masculine and feminine, divine masculine, divine feminine, this is really the two sides that make up how you sort of ebb and flow in energy, right? Mm-hmm. So feminine, divine feminine is like creative, it's, expansive, it's intuitive. Like this is where all of these, abilities and creative energy comes from. It comes from this source of divine feminine. Whereas divine masculine is your get shit done guy, right? He's the thinker. He's the one who executes. He's the one who can take that creation, that creative, beautiful thing that you're thinking about doing. He can take it, break it down, and then actually put it into action. So you actually require both just to function every day. So right. Just because you're a man or a woman in your sex or your orientation does not mean that you are all divine masculine or all divine feminine. You actually have both. And it's that symbiotic relationship between the two that allows you to create and then execute what it is that you wish to create. That's my take. What's your take, Jodie?
I wholeheartedly agree. I agree with everything that you have said, that there's both of these parts that come together to function as one. And the sad thing, or the thing that I've experienced in my life, I guess it's not sad, it just is that we're not really taught that. We're not really taught growing up that you have this feminine and masculine side, whether you're male or female. Or we were even talking before this episode when we were preparing about the distortion that has happened over, hundreds of years when it comes to being a woman and what it takes. So I think we should really get into our personal stories and what it was like for us, because living it is different than like conceptualizing it, like the thought of it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, so when I think about my life up to this point, and I think about like historically everything that I kind of went through as I was, building businesses, building lifestyle, building, all of the building that I've done in my life, I was definitely in a very masculine place. So for those of you who've been following along for a while, you know that I had another business that was a brick and mortar type of business. And this business became an empire that I was building and it became this almost its own animal. Now, I had a vision of what I wanted to create, but the vision alone wasn't enough to actually bring it into my experience. And so, having this, I want to have this, I want to be the go-to person for skin and permanent makeup. Like that was what I wanted to create. And I wanted to be a highly sought after international educator. And that's what I wanted to create. And the only way that I was going to do that was to get shit done. Right. And so the grind started, right? It was the constant hustle, the constant, working. And in that place, yeah, I was, a force to be reckoned with because I was building at such a fast and steady pace because I was in that, workhorse masculine mode of just grind and get it done. And, who cares? And in the end, like my body suffered, because I'm not built for that. Right. Not only does it go against my divine feminine nature of like ebb and flow and like go with the cycles and, all of the things that are me uniquely as being a female body, but it wasn't sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Staying in that masculine building mode was not sustainable. And in the end, it started to break down. And then I was fighting to hang on to it because I was still trying to hang on to that masculine energy. But the reality is, if I would have just stepped back for a minute and said, okay, we coast, get back in touch with who I am as a woman, get back into touch with my divine feminine energy of creation, I would have had the foresight of saying, maybe it's time to bring in help.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I need to create this for lots of people, not just me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that growing up in business, I think that's literally the belief that I had is that I had to be more masculine to build it, to be able to sustain it, to build it, to do all these things. I have to hustle, I have to grind all of these things. And the leaders that I was looking to for guidance, support, inspiration, all of these things were all male. I remember when I first started my brokerage business, there was maybe 2 females in the office. And so I truly at this like really deep down level believed that I had to be more like a man. And I'm going to be really transparent and really vulnerable. I wished that I was born a man for that reason. Like I felt this hurt for being born a woman and having this disadvantage, and all of these are limitations of my mind. And I want anybody that's watching that to hear that these aren't true, but we have been suppressed, or women have been suppressed for so long in the way that we do things or how to do things. So I thought that I needed to be more like a man. And darn it, I was going to do whatever it took to be more like a man. And when I say that, I mean less emotional, more steady, more stern, that control piece. And this is how it showed up for me. As someone else's experience may be different, but just this drive and this hunger and, no coloring outside the lines. There's only one linear path to get there. And it was cutthroat. And I was all of these things. And I was also dying. Like you were talking about, I was experiencing adrenal fatigue. I couldn't have a relationship to save my life, because I was sitting solely in the masculine seat. And I don't think that was divine masculine, because I think the divine masculine really supports, really nourishes that feminine side of things. And for me, I was using it as like a beating horse, like chains that I drug around, if that makes sense. It wasn't a positive thing necessarily. I was taking all of those things to the nth degree and trying to force myself into this box of being a man. And eventually it didn't work. And I was experiencing all of these things and I couldn't do it anymore. And I don't think that that's the only way to build a business. I think that you can be very successful stepping into the feminine and having the feminine flow with the masculine, and, volleying back and forth in this beautiful dance, if you will, between the two. And I think it's just understanding how you operate and how to bring both to the table that needs to happen.
Yeah, and I think, you that's really beautiful how you put that, about them working together, right? Like in partnership, like in unison, one working to support the other, because it goes both ways, and I think that that's really important to really capture, it works both ways. So if you're a man and you're listening to this, and you're in that, strong, got to get everything done, kind of vibe, and you're feeling maybe stumped in your creative essence, that is your divine feminine, the womb of creation, it really is a dance between the two sides. And if you get them working together, you're unstoppable, right? You have all this creation and you have all this execution and you have this support on both sides. This one may be like, oh, I want to do this thing. And this one's like, oh yeah, let me help you build it.
Let me support you with the thought process and the checklist and everything like that.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't know what feminine was. And that sounds really embarrassing. But I didn't know. I honestly, I don't know if you've ever seen that commercial before, but it's like a commercial of kids, and there's girls and there's boys, and they ask the girls and the boys the exact same questions. That they say, I want you to show me how to run like a boy. Now show me how to run like a girl. And it was like frilly and, like softer and, whatever this. And what I'm trying to get at with this comparison is that it's the way that we've been taught to see feminine, or I was taught to see feminine as weak. Suck it up, princess, be stronger, be less emotional. And it really cut off not only creation, but a huge part of me, who I am, who I wanted to become. I couldn't be those things because it was like I severed a portion of my body off. And I wasn't even taking it into consideration. I didn't know what that looked like. What does feminine mean? I don't know.
Well, and I think, when we were talking about this topic, and bringing forward this conversation, something that you had said in our conversation, I think that we should repeat for this recording about equality, right? Like there's so much this whole movement happening of equality, right? That women and men are equal, right? And when this is stated, of this equality, women and men being equal, there's a lot of things that happen as a result of this. And we're saying, women and men in the flesh, masculine and feminine in the energetic sense, it's all equal, fair game, all the same, right? And the fact is that one requires the other. Right? It's a balance.
And they're not the same.
And they're not the same.
They're not the same. I do not want to be treated the same. There's a beautiful, I'm sorry, I got really heated about this because it's the words that we lock into that have this meaning and create our entire reality. So equal is same. And what I think I wished for growing up was to be treated better, to be given more opportunities, not necessarily to be treated the same. And the visual that I saw that really nails this home, or like brings this home, is this picture of this fence. And on the other side of the fence is this, ball game. And then there's three people standing on the other side of the fence, and one is super short, one is average, and one is really tall. And it showed equality, equal, and they gave them each the same size box. So the short little dude couldn't see anything because he's staring at a fence. The middle dude is still like barely looking over the fence, and the tall guy now has this overreaching arch that he sees over top of the fence because he's so tall. And then just showing what it was equity instead of equality, equity instead of equal. And it was like the short dude got a little bit higher of one so that he could see over the fence properly. And the average guy got a little bit shorter box than the short dude because he didn't need as much reach. And then the last guy, he got nothing because he could see perfectly fine, or whatever it was. And it was driving this point home for me, at least, that I don't want to be treated same as everybody else because I'm different. And women are different. Women have incredible skills and abilities if they lean into what makes them great. Our brain is created differently. We were talking about this earlier. Now you got me on a tangent.
Let's go.
Earlier was that, it was like 30, maybe 40 years ago, no more than that though. I would bet that when it came to science, women were thought to be dumber because they have a smaller size brain. Not true. They figured out that it's not true at all. We just come in a smaller, petite package, including our brains. But we have, severed the things that women are so good at. That feminine side is so good at detail, paying attention, that softer emotional side, compassion. Not to say that men can't, because again, we all have divine masculine, divine feminine available to us, but we atrophy that one side of us because we think we should look like this. As a strong woman, I need to be independent. I need to take care of myself. I don't need anybody else. Well, you're saying to the universe and any potential partners that you wish for, I don't need you. I got myself. I don't need anybody else. And what a lonely world that we are creating with that mantra of being alone and not supporting one another. Now, especially with this ascension, now is the time to come together and to rely on what we're good at. What makes us special, because we're not all the same. And that's the power of community, is that we're all different and we're all special.
Yeah. And I think that, one of the things, just speaking science, okay, now this isn't necessarily divine feminine or masculine, but science and the brain and how it functions, right? Mm-hmm. Women have this, beautiful ability of diffused awareness, right? We are constantly scanning the environment for predators and berries.
Yeah,
okay?
exactly.
So, where men have really good single focus, right? So they are hunting prey, mm-hmm. and they're getting it done and providing for family, right? Yeah. So the thing is that together they eat well and they're not hunted.
Yeah.
So
they protect one another.
Exactly. Yeah. It's really the reason that I wanted us to have this conversation is because with all of this, woman power, whoa, go ladies, there's becoming this kind of dark aspect, right? Mm-hmm. There's two things that we see happening. We see an entire group of men that are feeling like they're kind of getting left behind. They maybe don't know where their place is anymore because these girls can do it themselves because they're tough, right? And that's unfair. That's unfair, right? Because we need each other. Mm-hmm. And the other side of it that I see is we're tough girls. We can do it ourselves, right? That's also unfair, right? Yeah. Why?
Well, then with that same reasoning, you feel, or I felt, the weight of the world on my shoulders to do it all myself. It didn't count unless I did it all myself, all on my own.
Right.
I mean, in what major corporation does anybody do anything really by themselves? You look at the biggest, most successful businesses in the world. It's many hands make light work. But I think that, watching what has happened, watching how women were put down for a long time. Let's be honest. Women can drive. Like Nate's grandma was the first woman to have her driver's license in that entire area. And it's a pretty big
Wow.
area. Yeah. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, that was only, a couple of generations away. That wasn't that long ago. And
Mhm.
I think maybe because we saw how we were treated, or, our parents saw, or whatever, that it was passed down maybe in the lineage, that's how, when you're on top, you treat everybody else. And maybe it's completely inherent, because I didn't think that I was being rude or mean or anything to men by saying I can do it on my own. I don't need any help. It's all up to me. I'm this boss babe or badass bee, like all of these things. But what I didn't realize was, like, I wasn't leaving any space for anybody else in my life, anybody else to support me with skills or abilities that I don't have. Like, we're not perfect.
Mhm.
Anybody, zero people are perfect on this planet. We could all use a little help in one area or another, or learn something or another. Like, we're not perfect, but it goes along the lines of being perfect and having to be perfect. This narrative that we're talking about, of doing it all ourselves because we need to prove that we're independent. Like, it's some bad thing for somebody to take care of you, to hold you, to support you, and whatever that looks like, and however that changes or morphs out of within yourself, as well as within your partnership that you're in.
Yeah. And, like I think about the time before I met my husband, and it was just insanity, really.
Mhm.
I mean, it was just so, I was working so hard. I was constantly traveling, it was just all work, you know, played by myself, and that was it, you know? And I think that if I would have continued that when we first started dating, I don't think that the relationship would have made it, to be just completely frank.
Mhm.
He is extraordinarily supportive. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I wouldn't have wanted to be with me. Like,
I say that to
truly.
Nate all the time.
I wouldn't have wanted to be with me. I would have been like, you can't even make time for me. Like, why would I want to be with you?
Yeah.
You know? And so, and it's because, energetically, I was completely unavailable
Mhm.
because I was too busy being both.
Yeah.
I didn't need him.
Yeah.
There was no room in my life for him. And so if I didn't create that space for him to walk into, he would have been like, what am I even doing here? This is a complete and total waste of my time.
Yeah. There's no room for me here. I don't fit.
There's no room.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny because we used to have these large conferences and stuff with my brokerage business, and people would meet Nate and my husband, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, we know Jodie. She's a beast." And he would always come home from those events and be like, "I don't get it. Like, everybody talks about how, like, you used to be this crazy beast." Like, I, it was something they were saying it in a nice way. Like, they were trying to pump my tires to my husband. But he's always like, "I'd like to see that side of you," like, out of curiosity. And I say the same thing as you believe with Quinn, that there's no way, you just wouldn't have fit into my life. And Jessica said in the chat, it's easier for me to consider divine feminine and masculine as energies, not genders. And same as this conversation that we're having about our spouses, for me, I completely cut off that feminine side of me. There was no room for her. There was no room for her to be a part of the scenario. And that's just as devastating, if not more devastating individually, than being cutting yourself off from partnership, whatever that partnership may look like for you. But I was literally cutting off that piece of me, like I had severed my body into two, and I refused to admit that she existed, that feminine side existed, because I didn't find it valuable. It's so I feel so shitty saying that, but I didn't find it valuable to be feminine in any sort of way. I thought it was a curse. And the transition through that taught me a lot. I have way more compassion for women than I ever have, because I went from that space to seeing how beautiful that feminine side is. Like women as a gender, they create babies. Like that is absolutely insane that they grow a whole new organ and then support life. I think it's so beautiful. And I rack my brain on what would have happened to me in my life, how life would look different if I wouldn't have accepted that piece of me that was missing for so long.
I think that, something that's really, that I think we should talk about is how masculine and feminine show up in the opposite sex, right? So let's talk about the men here. And we have like the chat is just blowing up. So we will definitely get to you girls. Don't you worry. For the guys that are watching, they are taught at a very early age to suck it up, be tough. Men don't cry, right? Men don't have these emotions, right? Mm-hmm. And emotions come from, in the human experience of whatever has happened, right? Mm-hmm. Emotions are human. The soul doesn't actually feel the emotions. The soul gets to experience the emotions because of the humanity, right? Yeah. And so, for men, they are taught at an early age kind of to separate themselves from that, emotional experience that their divine feminine may be able to reach in and touch. And it's unfortunate because, this mask of masculinity that men are wearing is keeping them hidden from something that's truly creative and beautiful and universal. This is the universe of creation in an energetic form. Mm-hmm. So, I beg you men that are listening to get in touch with your divine feminine, mm-hmm. because as we're moving into this, feminine energy, this Aquarian energy, how extraordinary the things that you can create by tapping into that energy. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's look at this chat because
it's blowing up. I wanted to say, while you're kind of just reading that for a second, something that popped into my mind is when I was so masculine and I had, cut off that feminine side of myself. And I think it's similar when men do this as well. When they're super masculine, they cut off that feminine side of themselves. For me, because it was a woman who has different hormones and different brain, and our brain PS changes every single week while we're in our menstrual cycles, when you're going through that before you go through what's called later on in life. Why is the word escaping me? You know what I'm saying? You go like through
menopause.
Menopause, yes, starts with mm-hmm. Yeah, menopause. Your brain is changing every single week. So all of these things, me trying to be more masculine was like me trying to row up a large stream, maybe even like one that has like a waterfall, and I'm trying to row up. And I think the visual that comes to mind when it's men that are, cutting off this feminine side of themselves, or they could be cutting off the masculine side. I don't know but the cutting off the feminine side is like them trying to row with one paddle. You're going to get there, but it's so much harder. If you just allow the two to work together and support one another, you can go faster. Now you're not going upstream. You're going with the current, with the wave. Yeah. Okay. Let's get to
one of the things that Jessica's talking about here in the chat is she's talking about how her husband and her had realized that the masculine and feminine roles were actually divided by talent between us, and started acting that way. And it took so much tension out of their home. And I think that that's really amazing. Like, my husband and I do the same thing. He supports me so much with, cooking and dishes and things like that. It's not stuff that I can't do. I can totally do it, but by him doing those things, it frees me up to have different experiences, you know?
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful, I'm so grateful. And it doesn't even, it's not a woman's job, right? Why
No,
can't a man cook and, clean dishes and things like that? Why can't a woman work on the car,
can
right?
if they like to. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Mine and Nate's is more of like a seasonal thing. When summer is in full swing, he is an outside guy. And, we have the farm and all of these things. So he is really busy doing all of these things all day long outside. So I'm the one that takes on more of like the household duties. Whereas, in the winter time when he's less busy, he cooks more. He likes to cook. He's a better cook than I am. He takes care of the dishes and the laundry and all of these things. So it's this dance in between what's going on in our life. But I like how Jessica put that like talent. I like that. It's a beautiful way to look at it.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Definitely. Okay. So where shall we dive in here? Let's see.
Trisha is asking, what do you think the catalyst for us as women thinking we had to be so man-like and think we didn't need anyone? Ooh, great question.
So I have a perspective on this, and I feel like this idea was very propaganda back in, maybe it was, World War II, somewhere in that
I think
range.
it even goes further back than that, but keep going.
Yeah, like I'm trying to think about like when did this actually start? And I was kind of feeling like it was maybe back then because the women supported the war effort, right?
Mhm.
And so they were gonna save the day. You see all the posters with the ladies that are like her, and I feel like that maybe was the kind of some of the turning point. But you're right, it could have been earlier. When do you think that happened?
Well, I think I don't know exactly when the shift happened, but I do know that on some of the pyramids in Egypt, they have all of these beautiful drawings on them and stuff. But I was watching a documentary, this is probably 2 or 3 years ago, and they were talking about the symbology of the two individuals in this picture and how the woman was always in front. And that symbolized like a man taking care of her and putting her first and like honoring her at this super high level. So we went from that in Egyptian times to where we are. So somewhere there was a disconnect between the two, and maybe it has to do with how beautiful and powerful women are. Very powerful beings when they sit in their seat of creation. It is unbelievable, the magic. And not saying that men can't do that either. It just comes a little bit more naturally to women, because it's the feminine. So maybe that had something to do with it. But I think you're right that there has been this campaign, for lack of a better term, on shifting to being really strong and really masculine and don't cry. And for me, it's I don't remember my dad ever saying that, like, don't cry, suck it up or anything. But I remember my brother telling me that a lot, you know.
It's really interesting. Like, here's my little conspiracy theorist brain coming out here. But do you think it's possible that this campaign was created to for control purposes?
Yeah.
If we control them, if we can control the psychology of a woman to be strong like a man and not be creative as much, is there a way that they can control, they, who they are, right? Is there a
Yeah.
way for them to control? Like, is that the campaign? Is that why this whole campaign of, you know, let's squish this feminine energy of creation so that a brighter future can't be created?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, because if
Maybe.
we're more powerful together, both individually, the masculine and the feminine coming together, and not saying that it has to be a man and a woman coming together in partnership, but even if we think of community, men and women, and the world coming together, we're stronger together. It makes sense. I think
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're probably in the channel right now, so you could confirm or deny the information if you choose to, but
I mean, you know, the thing is that, and this goes for men too.
Mhm.
There are a lot of you men who are watching this right now that are very strongly rooted in your feminine energy.
Mhm.
You know, you are powerful, strong, physical men who firmly sit in your creative power.
Mhm.
We see it all the time.
Yep.
You know, this isn't about sex. This
Yeah.
is about, or sexual orientation. This
Yeah.
is about your energetic bodies of divine feminine and divine masculine.
Mhm.
And so if there is this, you know, propaganda campaign of no, 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 women are, you know, women are weak, you know, women need to be strong, women need to be more like men. What are they creating? They're creating super soldiers, right?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely.
That
And I think
divine feminine is the super highway to intuition. And if they can separate you from your divine feminine, they can separate you from your intuition.
separate you from the universe, from God, your guides,
Yeah. Why
everything.
not?
Yeah.
Let's do it. That's what they say.
Yeah. I I think you're right on the money. I
Mhm.
think it makes sense. And I think it's really interesting too, just reflecting on this as we're having this conversation, that we both have manly men,
Mhm.
like burly, strong, tall men. And yet
Right.
they each have their own feminine attributes. Like Nate, I
Mhm.
can't speak for Quinn, but for Nate, he loves to nurture, whether it's through food or through growing
Mhm.
plants. He likes to be silly, and that is him sitting in that creative seat of
Mhm.
feminine. It's beautiful.
Well, exactly. You know, Quinn, you know, is a, you know, he lifts weights. He's a tough guy. He's incredibly intelligent. And he is Chef Quinn in the
Yep.
evening. And he is a creator. This
Mhm.
is what he does. He
Mhm.
has the power to create anything and everything for not just himself, but for anybody else that wants the support.
Mhm.
He's someone who's so in touch with that creative, divine, feminine self that he can manifest things for other people,
Mhm.
right? So, I mean, just because you have a physical body doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
It's
100%.
about the energetics behind it.
Yeah.
So,
Agree.
Jodie, tell us about the dark side of divine feminine and divine masculine,
Mm, the dark side. I don't
the
feel
dark
like
side.
I think it's uh, it's from a place of disempowerment, like disempowering yourself when it comes to that. When I think about the masculine side of things, just some examples would be like cutting yourself down, being super rigid. On the feminine side of things, um, being I on the feminine side of things, it would be trying to think of a tangible example that I can give you of like a toxic feminine trait. Nothing is coming to my head right now. I just
Okay.
drew a big blank.
I mean, I think that some of the, the toxic side of divine feminine would be where you maybe, I don't know, think that you're better than others,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
Because, as divine feminine, she's the best, the ultimate creator,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Even striving for perfection, that is a toxic trait. And us as women,
Exactly.
we do. Thank you for
Yep.
filling in the blanks here.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and that is a really big problem, right? That women deal with, is having to keep up with every young, thin, beautiful, rich Instagrammer in the world,
Mhm.
when who really cares,
Yeah.
right? Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
We're all
Nobody cares.
beautiful.
Yeah. And
You
the
know?
question that is coming up in my mind right now as we talk about this toxic side of masculine and feminine is it a learned behavior? Is it how
Yeah.
we see, like, show me a girl running and it looks completely silly in comparison to a boy running, this campaign that I was talking about, this commercial.
Mhm.
Is it a learned behavior? Is it something that we picked up somewhere that said, you look ugly when you cry, and that's what we think of emotion is ugliness,
Right.
or that we have to know everything and be perfect? Is that learned? Or is that a part of polarity, or is that something that combines both, perhaps? I don't know.
You know, Trisha's asking a question here. Is gossip a toxic divine feminine trait? And I think that's a really good question, because I think a knee-jerk reaction would be to say, oh, yeah, absolutely. But I think no. And the reason that I think no is because it goes back to a primal instinct of where are the best berries at? Which
Yeah.
plant is poisonous?
Yeah.
Hey, I just moved into this cave. Can you tell me where to find the clean water? Right?
Yeah.
Back
Yeah.
in the primitive days, this was the gossip, right? It
Yeah.
wasn't, is Susie, did she have a facelift? Oh my God, tell me everything, right? It wasn't that, you
Yeah.
know. So I think that gossip, I don't feel like gossip is a toxic divine feminine trait. It's only toxic if the information is belittling or slanderous, right?
Yeah. Or even
It's
if the
almost like,
intention is,
right,
what's the
right.
intention behind talking about it? Is it to talk about it to mock somebody behind their back? Is it, you're trying to figure out a problem, between a friend circle and figure out how to deal with something, and that's why you're gossiping? Is it, you're talking about world news and this is what I heard, or this is what I heard? What's the
Mhm.
intention behind it? Is it coming from a place of love? And that's really with everything.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
Trisha
is
asked,
what? Yeah,
so go
yeah.
ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Trisha asked another question that I think that we should speak to. Maybe we'll look at Jessica's first, because she's actually talking about gossip. So she said, I think gossip steals abundance because it clouds discernment with particulated negativity instead of oneness, acceptance, and love. It orients the perceiver to lack, which is opposite the feminine all. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe.
could be. Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
think that there is more than right and wrong, or black
Right.
or white. I think that there
Right.
is a lot of shades of gray, and it really depends on the seat that you're sitting in that moment. And that's why I always try to give people, when somebody has done something that has hurt me, I always try to give them the benefit of the doubt. If they didn't show up, or they didn't do, what I thought that uh, they should, I always look at it from that space. Like, maybe their intention wasn't coming from the place that I see it. Like, what other possibilities exist? Yeah.
Mhm. Definitely.
So Trisha had asked back, I gotta scroll back into all the comments here. I'm loving this. It's blown up. How did you open it back up? And I think this is really important as we're, counting down the time here. How did you, Heather, open yourself back up to this feminine side? after you were so masculine for so long?
I just choose. I chose differently. I took a moment and I reflected on my way of being, right? So, I had this beautiful, like amazing man enter my life. And I very quickly had to assess, do I want this in my life? Do I want this beautiful human, this beautiful soul that has presented themselves to me? And if I do, what am I going to do to allow this relationship to flourish? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at my life and I was like, this is not sustainable. This is not healthy. This is not me being me anymore. I just really took a good hard look at my life and how I was living and the experiences that I was having. And I'm like, is this enough for me? And then I chose. I said, I choose differently. I choose to have a bigger, more expansive life, one where I get to be me, the goofy weirdo that, runs around and is silly all the time. The overthinker, the overtalker, the oversharer, like this is who I am. Right. And I couldn't be those things in the current vibration that I was in. Mm. And so, I just chose. I said, I choose differently. I want this instead. Yeah. And it turned on.
Wow. Mine was not that easy. Oh. I didn't know what feminine meant. Like, I remember coaching. I was being coached at the time. And before I met my husband, and while we first started dating, like at the very beginning of our relationship, so just before we met and at the very beginning of our relationship, I had a relationship coach because I didn't know. Ooh. Before I had a relationship, because I knew I am the common denominator in all of my relationships. So I must be doing something wrong. So I need to, not wrong, but just something that isn't fitting with the direction that I see myself going. So when one of my coaches challenged me to step into this feminine perspective, this feminine energy, I was like, hey, what's that? What is feminine? So it started on a very like granular scale, lighting candles. Sure. So I would light a candle or two, and then that would make me feel a little bit more feminine, a little bit more open. Buying flowers, I would buy myself flowers, having a really nice bath, like taking care of myself in a new way. Allowing there to be flow. But for me, I had so much trauma around the I must be doing or I won't make any money. And I teach this a lot because I was stuck in that. If I take any time off, I won't make any money and then I will die. Right. So I had to come up against those things, which were really uncomfortable, and learn to support myself through it, to begin questioning, why do I believe this? How do I see it? How can it be different? Because again, we get locked into this one possibility, this linear road that we go down. This is the only way that it can be done. And I decided to scrap that and say, what else is out there? What else could it look like? What does feminine mean to me? And when I moved in with my husband, things changed. And I think this is a really important thing that people struggle with is that, one day we'll just be perfect and everything will just work and you'll never have any problems ever again. And, you'll just be done. And I believe that's when you're dead. It doesn't mean that things can't get better and things can be wonderful and beautiful, but you're here to experience. So things are going to come up and your life is going to morph because you've changed. The situation has changed. And you need to have that, I believe, you need to have that flexibility and that flow with what's going on in your life. So something else that I did when my husband and I moved in together I noticed, because I did sit in a very masculine seat, even though I started, bringing back the feminine. It's really easy for me to go into that do mode, that masculine side of things, of checklists and, the doing side of things. And I was very comfortable there, and I had started to implement it into my business, more of this flow state and taking care of myself and feeding myself and all of these things. But what I would notice is that I would come home and I'd still be a boss. Like, I'm still in that masculine seat. If there's two drivers, I think Allison Armstrong talks about this. In the car, there's two seats, masculine seat, the feminine seat. You pick one, right? And my husband is very like burly man and strong masculine dude. Not that he never takes that feminine seat, but that's where he wanted to sit, was the feminine. So I'd come home from work and we would butt against it. Like, I'm trying to tell him what to do and try and control the situation. And, I was jabbing him with all sorts of things, and it was causing this friction in our relationship. So I really had to step back and ask myself, how can I transition? Because I wanted to sit in the feminine seat. I want to be taken care of, and I want to be cherished, and I want to feel that flow and that ease while I'm in my partnership with him. That's what I desired most. So for me, I had a routine when I would come home. It was a half an hour drive. I turn off the radio. I would just sit and dump everything out of my head, whether it was just talking to myself or, just thinking, whatever. But I wouldn't let anybody call me. I would not take any phone calls. I would just allow all of this stuff, like my day, to like get out of my head. And then I would immediately come home. I would give him a kiss. I would go upstairs. I would sage with the intention of letting everything go and stepping into this feminine energy. And then I would shower, because that's how hard I was stuck in the masculine. I would sage, then I would shower with the intention again of rolling it all off, going down the drain, and then stepping out this beautiful feminine goddess. And that's what I did for, I don't know, probably 6 months or a year after we lived together, because I needed that practice of that transition from one seat to the other until I didn't need it anymore. And I felt comfortable being able to flip when I was in his company or whatever. And it's not that I always sit in the feminine seat. There's some things that I drive more than he drives, but it's knowing how to transition for yourself. And I think that's really personal. It's a journey for you to take.
One of the things that you almost touched on that I want to bring up that I think is really helpful for the ladies that are here, watching this episode, that Allison teaches in her work, and that is holding the trash can. Holding the trash can is one of the greatest things you can do for your girlfriends. And I bring it up for the girlfriends because, guys, they don't really like to hold the trash can. They will, if you tell them what it's all about, right? You have to explain what holding the trash can is. And this is what it is. You are literally going to empty everything in your mind, all of the emotions, all the funk, all the garbage, when we start really filling it up to here and we're like, oh my God, I can't breathe because it's so much. That is what you're going to empty into the trash can. And so for the one who is going to be holding the trash can, you need to explain to them, I just need you to hold the can because I am so full of stuff. I just need to vomit it out, and I don't need any advice. I don't need you to fix it. I don't need you to solve any problems. I just need you to stand there and hold the can while I get it all out, right?
Mm-hmm. Purge.
Oh my gosh. It is the most glorious thing that you can do. Mm-hmm. Whether you are doing it for your girlfriend, you're holding the can for her, or you are the one you're the one, requesting somebody to hold the can. You can ask your husband to hold the can, your boyfriend, friend, whatever, whoever. Just make sure they understand what holding the can actually means so that they don't try to suggest, help, fix, whatever. That is absolutely some of the best therapy in the world. I will call you, Jodie, and have you hold the can for me so much. My sister, oh my gosh, I'm like, I just need you to hold the can. Please hold the can. I'm calling right now. Hold the can, and she's like, I got you. This is something that's really important. And I think it helps keep that feminine piece open, able to receive, able to create, keep you in touch with, that divine feminine piece of you, and not separated from that.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I love it. Do we have time for one more question?
One more.
One more. Okay. Since it's the last one on here, it's Jessica. How do you ladies navigate your own gender role trappings in your relationships so you don't keep repeating old stories with your beloveds? Ooh, such a good question.
It
You want to
is.
take it, or
Sorry,
you
I
want
was
to take
kicking.
it?
You take it. I was kicking off a spammer just now.
Oh,
in our
thank
chat.
you.
How
Amazing.
rude.
For me, I am constantly self-reflecting on myself. So, or self-reflecting on myself. I'm in self-reflection all the time. I am thinking about why things bug me, and this has been the biggest learning in my marriage. Is, something will happen. My husband will do something, and I will feel like angry or frustrated or pissed off or whatever the words are, just not normally myself. And I'm just so mad about said thing. Could be whatever. This conversation actually happened. I was upset, really, really upset. I don't remember what tipped me off or whatever. And I went into self-reflection and I asked myself, why am I so mad? Why am I so mad right now? And what came up for me was these beliefs of what I should be doing to be a good wife. My house should be clean. The dishes should be done. I should be making dinner. I should. And I started shoulding all over myself. And I was like, that's interesting. I'm totally putting myself in this box and stealing it, taping the lid closed. You must do this to be a good wife, to be a good partner. These are my responsibilities. And then the next question I asked is, who said? Like, I figured out what the expectation is that I held for myself, or that was making me feel gross, and I was putting it on my husband. He expects me to do all these things. These words came out of my mouth. And then I really stepped back and asked, well, who says? Like, did he say to me physically at some point in our relationship, Jodie, I expect you to do this and this and this and this and this? No. And then I did the really courageous thing and I asked him, with me as your partner, what do you expect from me? Do you expect me to do the dishes all the time? Because I run 2 businesses. So I'm really busy. I'm as busy as I want to be. And I also like to relax and now like sit back in this feminine seat that I've created and I'm so comfortable with, and enjoy my life and play and do all these fun things. And I was feeling bad about doing these things and not being a good wife. So I asked him that question, what do you expect of me as your partner? And he said, nothing. I want you to be happy, whatever makes you happy. And I'm like, so you don't expect me to do the dishes every night or cook you dinner or whatever? And he's like, no, if you're busy, shouldn't I make dinner? I guess so. If you're busy, shouldn't I clean the dishes up? And it was like this mind-blowing moment for me, because it was a realization that I set the expectation for myself, that I put the burden and all of the pressure on myself. And I was the one to release it by simply questioning it. And sometimes it still comes up, when my house gets a little bit messy or whatever, things change, life changes. So I'm constantly asking these questions of myself. What is an expectation that my partner, has set for me, that he desires for me to do, whatever that is, versus what am I doing to be perfect myself? Or, what expectation am I trying to live up to that doesn't fit the life that I'm creating?
That is so huge. That conversation is pure gold, right?
Yeah.
It's you got to have these communications, right? Not just with your partner, but with yourself. For those of you who aren't in partnership right now, what is your expectation? That always perfect person that lives inside your head,
right?
What is she expecting, or he, for the guys who are listening, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is their expectation?
Yeah.
And is that something that you're up to? Do
Or
you
that
want
even
to?
do you even want that? Do you want a
Exactly.
house so clean you could lick the floors? I don't care about it that much.
Right.
I no. I think germs are good for people. Not that I have a disgusting floor or anything, but I'm just not willing to like that. That standard isn't important to me. I'm choosing to have this standard instead, and it goes back to what you were saying about choosing the feminine. It's also choosing the role that you want to play and what is going to serve you in your life. What's going to empower you? What's going to support you?
Exactly. Exactly. This is probably the most conversation I think we've ever had on our live. There's so much here. It's all just such gold. I don't know if this conversation transfers over when we post it or not, but it's just wonderful. And I highly encourage for future episodes for you to come and see us live, because you get to be a part of the conversation. And this was really wonderful today. And I thank you all for coming and sharing with us your thoughts and how you see things. And it's really just super beautiful. And I love our little community that we're growing here.
Me too.
If you like the video, be sure to like it. Be sure you subscribe. Subscribing is important, everybody. Please subscribe.
Yeah. And share with a friend.
Yes. Share.
Yes.
Exactly.
Next week, we have Calling All Star Seeds. It's going to be a channeled message from the divine, from our guides, to all of the star seeds on this planet, the ones that feel weary and possibly weak at this time, and what our guides have to deliver, the message that they have to deliver to all of you of hope and inspiration to continue to keep going. So that's next week. We're so excited that you're here today. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next week. Same time, same place.
Bye.
Bye.